Okay, as promised, we will discuss particle out. Again, we'll resort to the notion of container, right? And we promised this is the last time we will resort to the notion of container. So the first thing that I would like to say about container out is that it is in's counterpart, in out. So let us review the notions that we basically stated in entails. We have talked about the notion of literal meaning, that is literal being in a container, and now we're going to be saying literally being outside the container. So we can sort of paraphrase this as out meaning the absence of X, that is an element or a person, from a container. So that is the first literal notion, as in he's out shopping, that is out of his flat, apartment, home. The second notion will be that of area. So you're either in an area or out of an area. To be out of town. The guy in this case is on a business trip. The third notion would be that of being in on or out of some emotional or psychological state, right? Where we can say, as we illustrated in the previous episode, to be in love, to be out of love, to fall in love, to fall out of love. Here we go for out of love, or you can be out of your mind. And last but not least, we can resort to the notion of being in or out of a situation. We have already resorted to this illustration, count me out, right? Here, when we talk about being outdated or out of date, we're also making reference to the fact that something is out of fashion, for instance, that something is out of some space that is basically an abstract space. Let us bear in mind that time is the abstract manifestation of place. An expression that clearly lends evidence in favor of that claim is the following. Think of the literal go from home to work to the metaphorical temporal expression go work from 5 to 6. That is to work very little. So what about the expression the down and outs? Basically, there is a nominalization of particles down and out to make reference to people who are down, that is not doing well financially speaking, the homeless, and out in the sense that they are outcasts, in the sense that they have been cast out of the system or out of a specific social group or social class. Therefore, there are very interesting entailments again between the literal meaning of out, the metaphorical area meaning of out, being out of an area, the abstract, metaphorical, psychological or emotional meaning of out, that is not being in your mind, not being in your right mind, that is not being okay up here. And finally, being out of a social group or some social class. So, an interesting conclusion that we can derive from all these entailments, we've been discussing the entailments for quite some time now, is that we are trapped in metaphor. If we go from one metaphor to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, this means that there is no possibility, as we said at the beginning, to talk about A in terms of A. That is, we cannot talk about love in terms of love, in terms of in, or financial affairs in terms of financial affairs. We should always talk about A in terms of B, right? Love is a container. You fall in love, you fall out of love, you are in love, you're out of love. And the fact that we're using the word trapped lends further evidence in favor of the claim that we cannot escape metaphor. And the word escape, in turn, lends further evidence in favor of the claim that we cannot escape metaphor. And I could go on like this, like for ages, because I'm using the word escape and so on and so forth. So we're going from one metaphor to the next and the next and the next. So that is the reason why Lakoff and Johnson claim that metaphor is pervasive in everyday life and speech. More specifically, they claim that metaphors are cognitive, linguistic, and performative. That is, they have an impact on the ways in which we talk, think, and behave. Think of the metaphor, time is money. We spend time, we spend money, we save time, we save money, we budget our time, we budget money. We live on borrowed time, we borrow money, we lend money. We get paid by the hour. Therefore, we can conclude that we think, behave, and talk in terms of the metaphor, time is money, at least in our culture. So metaphors, when we say that they are related to the ways in which we act, are performative. This is something we will develop in the future. But I want to say, at least, I want to get a word in, a metaphor, get a word in here. We create social symbolic realities. We construct social symbolic realities when we say that someone balloons up, a metaphor that we used in some episode, right? That we have already discussed that. We can say that someone shrinks down, and we're talking about the politics of dieting, right? And that's political because it affects our bodies. Saying that someone is an outcast or a down and out is also a political statement, because by saying this and reproducing this metaphor, we are creating social political reality, of course, of a semiotic, meaningful nature. So the next thing that we will do is we will say goodbye to the container metaphor, and we will pass on to discuss on and off. Again, we say goodbye to a metaphor, that's a metaphor, right? Sorry to be so insistent on this point, but that's the whole point we want to make when we discuss phrasal verbs and idioms.
Listen, I paid a fortune for this show and she can't even sing. I'm out of here. If you don't love him anymore, you should probably get out of it, meaning out of a relationship. As we can see here, relationships are construed as containers. You're either in them or out of them.